Need a festive meal that isn't way too big? Feeds like 4 adults? Well, give this a try. Looks awesome, stays hot and ready to eat for hours, doesn't have to cost much. It's just a roast chicken and gravy with an all-in-one potato-vegetable side situation. As is often my first step when I cook a holiday meal, I'm going to clarify some butter. You could skip this and just use oil, but I'd take a stick or two of butter and just melt it in a little pot, bring it to a boil, and at this point you can see how the milk solids have started to separate out and get clumped together in little golden brown bits. When the bubbling calms down, that means that most of the water is gone, so it's done. When you strain it out, throw a paper towel on top, and that'll catch the tiniest bits that you don't want. Just pass it through and you'll have a particularly tasty cooking fat that you can use for the whole meal. Here's our chicken. It's 5 pounds, 2¼ kilos. That's about as big as I like to go with a chicken for roasting. You don't have to do this, but I'm going to cut out the wishbone to make carving easier later. Look here where the neck used to be. Feel around for the 2 wings of the wishbone just under the meat at the top here. Follow the bone with your knife to create an opening. Try to get underneath it at the top where the sides join together. And then you can just dig in with your fingers and pull it out. It may break and come out in 2 parts like that, which is fine. I'll plop that onto my widest pan. It needs to be oven safe. I like to tuck the wingtips up underneath the body, otherwise they tend to burn. A little of my clarified butter on top, and I'll smoosh that all over the skin. There's plenty of fat inside the chicken. This is just to get it started cooking until more fat melts out. With the bird upside down, I'll season the bottom with plenty of pepper and salt, flip her around and season the top side. Take a cut shallot or a chunk of onion or something and throw that into the cavity, mostly to flavor the gravy. Grab the official Thanksgiving herbs, thyme and sage. They don't have to be fresh, dry is fine. I'll stick those up there again to flavor the gravy. And I suppose because it's a special occasion, I'll use kitchen twine to bind the legs together. This just gets you a nicer looking shape on the final platter. However, tying does make the legs take longer to cook, so I like to score them a couple of times all the way down to the bone. That lets more heat in so the legs won't fall behind the other meat. Slide this onto the burner, and in my opinion, this is the trick for roasting a whole chicken, unless you're going to spatchcock it. Start it on the stove top. Use moderate heat to keep anything from burning and spoiling your gravy. The white meat up here is getting almost no heat, whereas the dark meat underneath is getting blasted. The dark meat tastes best when it's very thoroughly cooked. The white meat tastes best when it's just barely cooked. And the part of the breast that is getting a little bit of heat is this super thick part down here, which needs more heat than the rest anyway, so this really is the silver bullet for a juicy whole chicken. You don't need to brine it, which is good because I don't really like the texture of brined bird, and brine makes the gravy too salty. If you smell anything burning, turn the heat down. I'll do this gently for like 10-15 minutes before the pan goes into the oven at 400 Fahrenheit, 200 C, convection if you have it. A chicken that big will take almost an hour. Plenty of time to prep vegetables, and you could use all kinds of things. You could use white potatoes instead of these sweet potatoes that I'm peeling. White potatoes would probably be better, but this is the time of year when I try again to like sweet potatoes. This is not the quickest way to cube them, but it is safe and easy. Take 1 thick slice at a time, cut it into 3 pieces that way, and then same thing the other way. The smaller slices you can cut 2 by 2 or 1 by 1 to get even pieces. Sweet potatoes are so hard to cut when raw that I really do recommend going slow, 1 slice at a time. The hospital is very busy over the holidays. In those, go to a wide pan with a lid, ideally. I've got a few carrots here that I'll just cut into thick rounds. In those go, and I can get these started steaming in just enough water to cover the bottom of the pan. Get that heating up. For Brussels sprouts, you just slice off a little bit of that stem end, and then you can just cut each one in half. Any tattered outer leaves should just fall off at this point. You just brush them aside, mow through that whole pile. I'll throw those in with everything else and a little more water if necessary. This is a great way to steam a bunch of veg, even if you don't have a big steamer basket. You just stir it periodically so that no one piece boils for too long on the bottom. Most of the stuff in here is steaming, which is better. Up to you if you want to baste the bird a few times in its own fat. This definitely makes the skin look nicer, and we're going for visual impact for the holidays, so fine. Back to the veg. If you don't have a good lid, you could tent this with foil to retain the steam, or you could just buy this beautiful stainless steel rondeau from Made In, sponsor of this video, or buy a frying pan or a pot. I've been using Made In stainless pieces for this entire video because I actually use them for most of my cooking in real life, as you can see on this 12-inch frying pan. This is my workhorse. It goes in and out of the oven just great, really solid, comfortable handle, great angles inside for making pan sauces. These are pans used in 3-star restaurants that you can use at home. Made In partners with multi-generational factories and artisans to make pieces that should last a very long time. Their 5-ply stainless design heats so quickly and evenly. Good stainless, in my opinion, is the all-around best material for most things in the home kitchen. Made In's Black Friday sale is happening right now. Hit my link in the description to check out the stainless collection and my other favorite cookware from Made In. Thanks to them. Anyway, these veggies will roast better and faster if you pre-cook them a little, until they're like halfway to being fork tender. That's more than enough steaming. I now want to shock these in cold water, and honestly, the easiest way to do that is to take the whole pan to the sink and just run cold water through it. Let it flow over the sides, taking all that heat with it. Just keep flushing until nothing in here feels hot anymore. It just takes a minute to stop the cooking and stop things from turning brown. I can use the lid to drain this thoroughly and get rid of all that water. I have a few stalks of celery in the fridge. They make the house smell like Thanksgiving, and they don't need any head start before they roast, so on the pile. More fresh thyme and sage if you have it. Strip the leaves off the stems and chop them up. In they go with the veg. And you could roast these on a cheap aluminum baking sheet, but I highly recommend finding a decorative, oven-safe roasting/serving tray. This has been my secret holiday weapon since somebody gave it to us at our wedding. Honestly, I did too much veg. You don't want it piled up on itself. You want a thin layer that can roast evenly and thoroughly. If your clarified butter has gone solid, just microwave it for a sec and you can pour the rest of that on. Whole butter would burn. You'd normally use oil, but because we took the milk solids out of our butter, we are golden. Season this heavily with pepper and salt. Toss to get everything coated. This really is too much veg for this pan, but I'm committed now. I'll roast it in the oven, which is available now because the bird is basically done. The thickest part of the breast is reading 155 Fahrenheit, 68°C. Cook it a few degrees hotter if you need to be very careful about bacteria, but this is going to rest and effectively pasteurize for a while, plus I'm putting it back in the oven at the end. Ooh, that is going to stick, and I'm going to burn myself. Slide under it with the spatula a few times to release so it all comes out in one attractive piece. Set that aside to rest. I've cranked my oven up to its maximum temperature because I want to get this veg very brown and crispy. And again, I've crowded my pan more than I should. Make the gravy while you wait. Heat back on under this pan, and I'll stir in just enough flour into that chicken fat to make a thick paste. I always put in too much. Loosen with a little oil. Compared to turkey gravy, chicken gravy tends to lack a little in flavor and color, so I like to compensate by browning my roux for a few minutes, nice and gentle so that it doesn't burn. Just let it slowly turn a little browner than it was when you started. Now I'll start stirring in chicken broth, a little at a time so I can easily stir out the lumps. Scrape the bottom of the pan to dissolve the yummy bits. Any and all resting juices from the chicken go in, obviously. Simmer this for a while to thicken it and develop the flavor. I'll probably add a whole second carton of stock to compensate for evaporation. That's great, we're concentrating flavor. Taste for seasoning, needs a lot of pepper and a little salt. My last prep is to take a pomegranate, cut it in half, and then tap out all those little fruits. No, the blade is not facing me. Yes, you could use another implement, but it needs to be heavy to have enough force. There are more effective and cleaner ways to do this, and you can learn those from someone else on the internet. The vegetables are going to need to be stirred a few times, add more butter or oil if things look dry. We want to fry those pieces, which again would have been easier and quicker if I hadn't done too much. Learn from my mistakes. Those took me like 45 minutes to get crispy, but that's fine because we are going to make a little hole in the middle and then plop the chicken back on there. facing the other direction, for thumbnail purposes. I'll reheat it in the oven for about 10 minutes. You could even turn the oven off or very low and let everything keep hot for an hour or two if you're waiting for guests. If your gravy is too thin, evaporate it some more. If it's too thick, add broth or water. Easy. You could strain this into the serving boat to get out all those little bits of chicken skin and stuff that stuck to the pan, but I consider those bonus, so get a trivet to protect whatever surface your hot serving platter is going on. Chicken is reheated. Warn your guests about that hot tray. It will keep the food hot for a long time, which is awesome. Scatter those fresh pomegranate seeds on top of the veg. Those are great. They do the same thing that cranberry sauce does in a traditional Thanksgiving meal. Plus, they're crunchy and pretty. I'll strip a few more thyme leaves off their stems just for a pop of green, and that's a pretty awesome looking thing to just drop on the table in front of a few guests. For what Marco Pierre White calls that sense of occasion, I would carve this at the table. Once I pull off the leg quarter, it should be easy enough to slice right off the breast there, especially since we took the wishbone out. The sharper your knife, the cleaner your slices will look. I need to sharpen my blue knife. Nice, juicy, just barely cooked white meat on the plate with some of our starchy veg medley. If I want a leg, I can just pull it off the thigh, pull it to expose the joint, and then cut through. That dark meat we've cooked to the delicious fall-apart stage because we started it on the stovetop. Everybody takes as much gravy as they want, and that tastes about as good as you'd expect roast meat and gravy to taste, which is pretty darn good. But honestly, the star of the show for me is the pomegranate. Little crunchy bursts of sweet tartness contrasting beautifully with those deep roasted flavors. Very cranberry-like, very festive.